Hey, Adele.
Hmm?
Thank you for going on this dumpling adventure with me.
You are very welcome.
Because I fucked up.
Yeah, we'll see if we actually made anything edible.
I still have no idea what this is.
It's the Christmas dumpling.
I was like guarding the kitchen from Luna, because she sure wanted some dumpling.
She just wants whatever's in the kitchen.
She just wanted to eat her
true.
feet.
Oh God.
I mean, that too, I'm sure.
Why don't you just call out Luna's foot fetish? Why don't you?
I just
Awful.
did. Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? I just did.
Luna's
awful.
really into feet.
Bare feet.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Not
she likes
soft
human
feet.
feet, too.
She likes to smell regular human feet. I just got it.
Oh my God. I have so many regrets. One of them is saying the phrase bare feet. Luna,
Is not here. She's upstairs.
if Luna was here, I would apologize to her.
You don't have to.
She knows.
She knows.
She's not ashamed like
Oh
humans.
my God. I don't feel shame like the humans do.
Shame me like one of your human girls.
Oh my God. So let's talk about
Whoa.
Titanic. Actually, let's not, because that's a whole other can of grave of worms that I cannot open, because
Yeah.
I will go down that rabbit hole.
Yep.
Open
can
that can of
confirm.
worms and go down that rabbit hole.
I was really into Titanic, not the movie, the ship, when I was a kid.
It's still hot, so be careful. Ah, sorry.
Ooh.
We've got taste test of the dumpling.
It tastes like dumpling. Probably use more like allspice.
Yeah.
Like a little more spice, a little more sugar, but it still tastes like dumpling.
Yeah.
Probably needs more berries actually, because like, and probably needs to be mixed before.
Yeah. Made properly.
Yeah.
Maybe so.
The
Yeah.
recipe kind of it didn't say anything about mixing. I think because it was
Before spice jar.
generally you mix ingredients anyways. So your grandmother decided to not put that mixing in there because
She doesn't put a lot of things in her recipes, so I've been struggling a lot.
Kind of got to figure it out as you go.
It's like, oh yes, 2 eggs in this recipe. What kind of eggs? We're not going to tell you.
Ostrich.
Future
Obviously.
aliens out there, we're not going to tell you what kind of eggs we put into
Future
our
aliens.
future aliens out there. When this podcast inevitably gets broadcast to, like, I don't know, Gliza 495 or whatever it is, we're not going to tell you what kind of eggs go into our recipes. You're just going to figure it out for ourselves. Ooh.
We can figure it out. We've
We'll
got
figure
containers.
it out. We'll figure it out. I'm gonna let it cool. I turned the oven off, so it's just on the on top of the oven. Oh, fuck me.
What?
My mom just told me dumplings are good fried in butter.
Ooh.
Are good fried in butter?
Fried in butter.
That's a whole new level.
That's a whole new level. I love
it's like
that.
the butter fried. What is it called? The butter fried.
Deep fried Mars bars.
No. I mean that too, but in the empty bowl they talked about butter cooked Cheerios.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
I really want to try those. Yeah.
Ooh. That sounds tasty.
Hi, welcome to Liminal Spaces. I'm your local unknown cryptid, Adele.
Ooh.
I'm Frosty's widower, Nick.
This will be good for the recurring listeners. At least these ones are recorded in order.
Or are they?
I don't know.
Oh God! And I'm your sentient bassinet, Chris.
Oh,
Am
you're
I a
thinking that-
helmet or am I a crib?
You're always the helmet, though.
I'm always the helmet.
Welcome to my crib.
Hey guys, welcome to my crib. It's just a helmet. Ooh.
I hate that.
And
Sounds-
Chris is joining us again this week. As we said, he's going to be joining us for the next couple.
Please break me out of this basement.
No. Chris lives here now.
You're stuck here. You've been stuck here for a whole almost 3 weeks.
It's so comfortable.
In the Liminal Spaces verse, Chris actually lives here for a month.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because now that we've spoken it into being, and with the multiverse theory, there's a Liminal Spaces verse where this is...
Oh god. E-boy Chris is stuck in the liminal spaces.
We've come full circle.
Well, I guess that's it. We'll finish.
Roll
Finished in
credits.
6.
Roll credits. Hey guys, bye!
So this week we're gonna talk about Chris's subject. Chris has brought a spicy take on a classic.
Spicy cold take?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spicy cold
it's
take?
very spooky, very scary. I will be talking about, so living in southern Ontario, there is this thing which is called the Wendigo, which is part of the basically the... Now, bit of a disclaimer, I am not in any way native to Canada. In fact, I'm one of the furthest things you could be native to Canada.
You were born in Canada,
I'm the first person in my entire family born in Canada. I come from an immigrant family, so I am like the furthest thing removed. But living in southern Ontario, you are sort of exposed to a lot of stories such as the Wendigo, and I would just want to like basically talk about it. Talk about a couple of like the weird cultural things that have come up in modern pop culture surrounding it, and basically just talk about it in sort of like its status as like sort of like the spirit of winter, because there are a lot of things it represents: greed, gluttony, basically just a whole slew of negative things. So that would take like literally forever. So I'm just going to talk about it in like one of its aspects. So the Wendigo is a
Hey, anyone who wants to play along, take a shot every time Chris says Wendigo.
ooh, please don't do that.
Disclaimer: we do not condone that. Do not blame us for any.
Please take a nice sip of cold water, because hydration is good.
If Chris can't drink alcohol, neither can you.
No, I can't.
Chris
I
Grant?
cannot
Chris Grant?
digest it.
Grant.
Sorry?
Is the Wendigo's name Wendy?
No.
Is Wendy a Wendigo?
Wendy is a Wendigo.
That makes a lot of sense.
Oh my god, like Wendy's
Wait.
Wendy?
Yeah.
What?
Wendy's Wendy is a Wendigo. The redhead is a Wendigo.
You guys do know she's a real person, right? And
Yeah?
she's the current CEO of Wendy's.
Yeah, and she's a Wendigo.
She has to be, because we said it.
Oh my god.
Yeah, we're clearly the
Ooh.
most highest rank in terms of
Oh,
this
God.
kind of thing. We make the laws now.
Another disclaimer that you can says all you need to know about my life. My mom just sent me a text that said, "Oops." So
Oops.
anyway, talk about the Wendigo, Chris.
Take it
away.
Just an overview for for those of you who may not know what it is. The Wendigo is essentially it's an Algonquin concept of basically a cannibalistic cannibalistic spirit that it's really hard to pin down what exactly it is, because first of all, there are a lot of different peoples within the Algonquin group. So the stories of the Wendigo stretch all the way from Nova Scotia down to like Wisconsin.
Gross.
So it's a very wide geographical area, so you get a lot of different interpretations of what it might be.
Especially considering it used to all be just word of mouth.
Exactly. And we'll get into this in a bit, but the Wendigo is very much a how it's interpreted is very much a product of sort of like the suffering that people might be going through at a certain time. And this is a very, very interesting thing. But some of the, basically the core elements of it is always considered to be evil. It is always considered to be cannibalistic. preys on the weak, and it's very, very often considered to be an aspect of winter.
Cannibalistic on itself or on humans? Because is it
On
like
humans.
Because it's a form of human, right? It's like it's a fucked up form of a human.
So yes and no.
Because otherwise, it's not a cannibal.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those things where like there, because of all the interpretations, but yeah, normally it is considered to be a basically a corrupted human that has committed like a very serious taboo. Often it is cannibalism, but it can be other acts of violence, and basically it is like something that brings like a sickness to a group, sort of like something that will like, it basically like infects a group and causes like suffering, because it is basically like a form of
like a physical
Yeah.
form of suffering.
yeah, it's like
Physical
almost like an
representation?
Anthropomorphized.
anthropomorphized. There we go. I can say words sometimes.
Only sometimes.
I'll be
I
right
have
back, keep
spoken
recording.
English for the good old 23 years. Anthropomorphized form of like a suffering that a group might be encountering, especially in the winter.
Well, yeah, especially like Canadian winters, like
Yeah.
North American winters, and back when winter wasn't
Yeah.
globally warmed, and
Oh, yeah.
you know, before structures like this, like indigenous structures, they did the best they could, but woof.
Oh yeah, and like if like you've never experienced like we live in like southern Ontario, so winters here are relatively mild.
Yeah, they're not even as bad as they can get.
Like go a couple kilometers like north, like into like the northern parts of
Like
Ontario.
Ottawa.
Yeah, Ottawa, or even higher up like Thunder Bay. Oh
Yeah.
my God, winters there are
Actual Algonquin Park.
brutal. Yeah, winters there are brutal. So, it makes sense that like lots of stories of the Wendigo originate from like this like really cold, harsh like part of the world. Let's see. Let's take a look at my notes. So yeah, there are lots of different interpretations of like the Wendigo, because there are lots of different peoples in the Algonquin group. So you can't really like pin down exactly what it is, but the cannibalism and the evil are some of the most important, most common aspects of it. And because of all the different interpretations of the Wendigo, there are also different physical interpretations of what it might look like.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to take a minute to talk about the depiction of the Wendigo in current pop culture, because I don't know where this came from, but
So what have I missed?
so far you've missed basically just like me talking about
History.
how the different how there are lots of different groups in the Algonquin, like sort of like people, which is a very wide it's a very wide category, because it's basically just like people who speak like a similar language.
Yeah.
Their actual like cultural identity would
They're
be
like a language family.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we haven't gotten to the juicy stuff yet.
Ooh.
We haven't gotten to the juicy stuff yet. So, because there are lots of different peoples, the interpretations of what a Wendigo might look like do vary quite a bit. One of the... Oh, sorry, I was going to talk about the pop culture one. So,
Yes, okay.
there has been this trend recently in pop culture where you get sort of like the images of a Wendigo with like stag horns and sometimes an entire like stag's head.
Oh, really? I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
Hannibal.
Hannibal, I can't, I don't know for certain, but I do think that Hannibal is responsible for a good chunk of the popularity of this interpretation.
Yeah, probably.
And you do actually tend to see like this one person's like illustration of like what a Wendigo would look like. It's from their DeviantArt, and like you see it all over the place. And it's a very new sort of creation. And I don't know if it plays into sort of like that idea of like a woodland spirit, so it has like antlers.
Maybe
whereas,
like a what's it called? Like a bestialized
Yeah.
human, like
Yeah.
a human turning kind of animalistic.
Yeah. Or like it might even be
Primal.
like a weird amalgamation of like what was that one forest deity, the one pagan forest deity.
Cernunnos?
Yeah, it was like it might be like a weird like fusion of that because like you have that horned god, a horned like spirit,
It's
and
usually
then
more of a goat, but
Yeah.
still the horns.
still the horns.
Be horny.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
I don't know.
You. Okay. Anyway, that's my one joke for this episode.
I would like to rage, please.
I would like to rage, please.
That was a Critical Role reference. Go watch that. It's really good.
Or if you don't have
Matt
enough
Mercer,
time,
consider this your one free plug.
if you don't have enough time, go listen to the podcast of it because it's pretty good and it's edited a little bit more. And I don't have enough time to watch things live, so anyway.
This like interpretation of like a stag-headed sort of like Wendigo is a very very. It's not as traditional as like the other two interpretations. Now, I am the furthest thing from an expert on this sort of thing. I just want to talk about it. But yeah.
Yeah, that's basically the whole podcast.
Yeah.
It's just, we don't really know that much about these things, but we're interested, so let's
Yeah.
talk about it.
So, just a side note, the reason why I'm so interested in this is because I am absolutely fucking terrified of the Wendigo. And I have been since I was a kid. Because, like, when you're, like, living in, like, Canada, you get exposed to, like, these sorts of, like, things through, like, television and stories and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And the concept of this absolutely terrified me. Because the thought of, like, not only a malevolent cannibalistic spirit that is going to come and get you terrifies me, but then the idea that you can turn into one is even more terrifying. But yeah, another
More so than vampires?
Oh, here's the thing. Vampires. I'm not too squeamish about blood.
Ah, yeah, that's true.
I am very used to blood.
But, like, eating people is a whole other story?
Yeah, that's like... They're both, like, weirdly, like... in a cannibalistic sort of, like, thing. But, I don't know, just, like, eating, like, a whole-ass person is just...
A whole ass person?
A whole-ass person.
You just eat an ass person?
Yes. We have declared
eating
war
ass
on the
person.
ass people.
What?
We've declared war on them.
On the people who eat ass.
On the people of ass.
The people who eat ass?
But yeah,
It's
it
funny,
is,
Wendigos are ass people.
ooh, ooh, don't like that. So, some of the more traditional, quote-unquote, I guess it wouldn't be quote-unquote, some of the more traditional depictions of the Wendigo are that of an emaciated corpse. So basically...
Yeah, that's what I know of. Like,
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of the stag until just now, because
Yeah.
I never watched Hannibal either.
Yeah.
But,
I
yeah,
watched-
like,
that's
even-
that's another show I watched like the first season of and didn't get further than that.
There are a lot of, like, subtle, like, depictions of, like, Wendigo-like entities
Yeah,
in,
'cause,
like,
like,
a lot of popular culture as well.
and even in Supernatural, or
Yeah.
That Wendigo episode and Supernatural was like the scariest fucking episode.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
absolutely, well, other than Bloody Mary fucked me up.
That's
But I've
valid.
always been scared of Bloody Mary.
Mirrors be like that.
Yeah, but no, the Wendigo one was super terrifying. But that one's more of like an emancipated
Yeah.
demon.
Emancipated.
Emaciated.
Emaciated, close enough. Words are all.
Oh my god.
Anyways,
Well,
and there's also that other game. There's that game Until Dawn, I think it's
Yeah.
called. Those are the two kind of main ones that I know, and they're both like more
Yeah.
kind of that weird.
Until Dawn fucks me up because like anyone can be the villain.
Yeah.
Depending on your choices.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a wild one. I've never played it, just seen it through. But either way, those are kind of what I had in mind. So I didn't. Yeah, that's kind of more of the traditional imagery of
Yeah.
it, kind of.
You do tend to find that a lot of people who are like in sort of like the cryptid sort of community, they tend to more lean towards the stag-headed one. I don't know why.
Hot.
I mean, maybe that, but also, you know, the I think to make it maybe less human.
Maybe, yeah.
You know, to make it more of like a weird otherworldly creature.
It's antler dysphoria.
Yeah.
Ooh. Ooh. But yeah, so one of the traditional depictions of the Wendigo is that of like basically like a very corpse-like, emaciated body that still looks very humanoid, but it's often described as having like no lips, no toes, which interestingly are some of the first things to go when you get frostbite.
Yeah. Yep.
Which
Yep.
brings it back into the winter thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Did you tell I wasn't here. Did you tell the story about like one of the first like Wendigo stories? Or one of the more popular ones?
No, I did not. Would you like to tell it?
Do you want me to tell it?
Sure.
I can tell it in very broad terms.
Sure.
So like there's this guy who has to leave to go north to hunt for food. He takes his family with him. So his wife and their, I think, 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And but they get lost in the snow. They got trapped there, and they get trapped there for a while. They have to they eventually like make camp and like have to winter there. And then apparently,
do the parents eat the kids?
No. See, the thing is, they're not heard from the entire winter.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the winter ends, he's found, like starving, but like also not dead. And he tells that like the rest of his family like died in the winter from like freezing and, you know, and then they eventually like track back to his original camp and they find like their bones had been gnawed on with human teeth.
Oh, for sure.
And they're like, oh shit, this guy like, you know, he ate them to survive. And they did start with like the kids because like the kids died first, and then but like eventually they and then they like kind of like I guess brought like to, for lack of a better word, brought him to a trial for that, and like under the circumstances that he is turned into a monster. At least that's the version of the story I heard. So
yeah, and like this one is like actually a true story because I think I do remember like this one.
You wanted more.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, basically like I think he had 6 kids. So
yeah, he had like there was I know I don't know how many kids there's normal.
Yeah.
Both my siblings have 2 kids, but like both my parents had like 7+ siblings. So
my grandmother had like 14 kids. So
Hachi
yeah.
machi.
I have a lot of aunts and uncles. So yeah. But yeah, that is one of the sort of like the real life stories of like the Wendigo, and sort of like this like concept called Wendigo psychosis, which is essentially like it's a very disputed term in sort of like the psychological field, because like some people are really like debate like its validity, but basically it's this concept that somebody has like intense cravings for human flesh, and they will have like insane fever and a lot of like physical like symptoms, and they'll have like this intense fear of like becoming a Wendigo.
Yeah, but it's important to note that Wendigo psychosis is very culturally limited, I guess is a good word.
Yeah.
Like, like you're not going to be a basic white person and be like, I have Wendigo psychosis. You don't. It's very cultural.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like, and I think that's part of like why it's like so disputed, because like, oh, they're not white, so that's their opinions don't matter. That sort of like bullshit that you find in a lot of medical fields.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not going to get too into it, just because that's a whole can of worms that I don't really want to open.
Mm-hmm. Don't want to lay in that?
Yeah.
Don't want to like wiggle around in those worms?
No, thank you. But yeah, we're still on like the physical depictions of the Wendigo. So the sort of like the emaciated corpse is one of like the depictions. Another very interesting depictions, and I actually read a story once about this, is that of almost like an ice giant, maybe not like literally like made of ice, but like almost like a giant that's like sort of like an aspect of winter.
The
Like
frozen heart.
With the frozen heart.
Like Abominable Snowman?
Not quite Abominable Snowman.
Like Abominable Snowman, but you like shaved him and starved him for a month.
Yeah, and like you do find a lot of the similar depictions, like no lips, no toes, very much like sort of like that sort of like somebody who was like left out in the cold too long sort of depiction. But what's interesting about them? What?
What? Go on. What?
An interesting thing about this aspect of the Wendigo is that the reason it's a giant is because every time it essentially consumes a person, it grows in size, so the consumption of that person can never satisfy them. So the bigger this kind of like Wendigo is, basically the more people it's consumed. And like there is like really horrifying, like its footsteps will have like blood in them, and it's like
Ew.
a whole can of worms.
Don't want to have to clean up after that one though.
Yeah. But this actually goes into a story that I read one time where basically this guy is hunting this kind of Wendigo. He is basically out in the woods because like this thing is hunting his family, I think. And this gets into a very, very important aspect of Wendigo stories, because he eventually tracks down the Wendigo, and he's very prepared to fight it. Like, obviously, this is terrified, because this thing is huge. It's killed a lot of people. But he spent, like, basically his entire day, like, rubbing a flammable resin onto his arrow.
Nice.
And he shoots it, and this flaming arrow pierces his heart, and that's what kills the Wendigo.
Hey, I'm starting to like. Have you noticed how a lot of like the mythology of this particular Wendigo falls right alongside Disney's Frozen?
Disclaimer: I've never actually watched Disney's Frozen.
I've only seen it once. I don't really remember.
No, it's like you have to melt the ice to like save the person, whatever, blah blah blah. Except it's like less like let's kill them, you know.
Interesting.
And I don't think like either of them have like consumed human flesh on screen. So
On screen.
on screen.
On screen.
You never know what goes on behind closed doors.
Idina Menzel, because I know you're listening to this.
Oh my god.
If a Frozen 3 happens, please get them to get a bigger orchestra. You deserve better. You deserve better.
Anyway, go
on.
on.
So this gets into another aspect of basically the Wendigo. Oh, before I continue, an interesting thing about like this sort of Wendigo that like is an ice giant that like expands every time it eats a person is a lot of times if this Wendigo was like a person transformed, sometimes the frozen heart will actually be the person. Who originally was the person who got turned into the Wendigo.
Whack.
Yeah, and only like destroying that heart, which
You destroy the person at the core of it, then you stop the beast from rampaging.
exactly, and it's
Makes sense to me.
It's an interesting interpretation, or an interesting like aspect of the Wendigo. But this gets into one of the most important aspects of the Wendigo story that I think that like a lot of like people who aren't tuned into like sort of like the folklore of this really grasp is that a lot of times in these stories the people win.
Yeah.
And I think that's a central aspect of the Wendigo story, that you have this huge terrifying or like this like disgusting terrifying creature that's like hunting you down and
Essentially corrupt human.
exactly, but at the end of the day other people will always triumph over the Wendigo, because it is basically the way you defeat a Wendigo is by working together with your community.
Teamwork.
And that's such a central aspect to the Wendigo that like I find that like modern appropriations, and let's be real, it's appropriations
It is 100%.
of the Wendigo, just never take into account that the Wendigo at the end of the day is a story about the human spirit and working together to survive a harsh cold winter.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's
Welcome to my TED Talk.
that's a central aspect to it that I think is just not found in like modern interpretations.
Yeah, it's one of those things that like in a lot of like indigenous legends and folklore and stuff, they obviously have like a very clear message to kind of get the idea across, and
Yeah.
and that
There's a moral at the end of the story.
Yeah, and very much like you would need to have a story like that to kind of. I mean, there's the fear of it, of course, too, but it kind of also, fear motivates.
Yeah.
And if you're in this cold, harsh winter, you have to have community in order to survive.
Exactly.
And so in modern day, where that is not only because it's been appropriated and stuff has been lost, that's less of a concern now because we have modern day structures and whatnot. So even though I fully believe that you still need community to get through winter because winter's rough.
Winter is rough.
Winter is, the season, especially like season of, declining mental health because there's less sun and everyone's stuck inside and
Cabin
it's cold.
fever.
Yeah.
Cabin fever.
And like there used to, and like there's less so normally now, but there used to be like a big fear of like running out, like the winter running too long, and then you're running out of supplies, you're running out of food, you're running out of what you've saved for the winter, and that I think that's where a bigger part of that fear comes from, because a lot of these stories that I've heard of the Wendigo is there's a family unit that is isolated from the rest of the community, and that's why one person turns to like eating the others to survive.
Exactly.
Even if they don't initially kill them, they still like once they're dead,
Exactly,
need
like,
to eat something.
Like you're starving anyway, and this person just died.
Yeah.
There's a source of food, which like I understand more, but like it's also like I feel like the modern iterations have like hit so much on the like don't eat people part.
Yeah.
As in, like,
because
and
that's more of a not a modern day fear, but more of a scary thing.
yeah, but it's also like I think the original moral was supposed to be don't like isolate from your community, because then if this happens you're gonna have nothing else to turn to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which goes back to your moral of like this is about community fighting back against this.
Yeah, exactly. Because like I said, like at the end of the day, the people always win against the Wendigo because that's what makes humans special. The fact that we work together. We crawled out of Africa solely based on the fact that like we know how to work together and we can form these communities because together we are far stronger than we are alone.
And we all we have like this innate wanderlust too. Let's be real.
Exactly. But speaking of modern day interpretations of the Wendigo, a very important thing to note about the Wendigo is it's not an ancient legend that people
Thousands of years ago.
Well, I'm sure maybe it's been around for a long time, but it's not like it continued until more recently.
It's not long dead.
There are a lot of like early 1900s stories about Wendigo hunts.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, because that's still, even then, Canada was still new at that point.
Exactly.
And an important thing to know is that because like a lot of these peoples like obviously still exist, the story of the Wendigo has also evolved with them and with their societal problems. So, and this is where we start to get into the Wendigo less so as like a spirit and more so as like a concept.
Yeah.
Because you do find a lot of peoples will go like a lot of peoples will interpret sort of like capitalism or environmental destruction or basically like all the suffering that colonialism has done to them as sort of like a Wendigo, and that's where you get into it more less as like a person who has gone and like who through their greed and corruption has started like basically destroying the community. You get into this concept of like corporations and greed and all that.
It's still like it's those concepts on a larger scale.
Exactly.
Which I think is the sign of a good legend, a good myth, is that it crosses, what's it called? It stands the test of time.
Yeah.
Like it is very easy to see what it's saying, and you can apply it to wherever the world is at that point that you're living.
Yeah. So that's like the biggest thing you gotta make sure you take away is that
we need to band together to fight against greed and corporations.
Also, don't appropriate the story of the Wendigo. There are so many other less culturally significant or maybe look into your culture. Maybe you have the story of like a winter spirit that is going to tear apart your community.
Probably.
Yeah.
Me.
Don't appropriate the Wendigo for your stories. But yeah, at the end of the day, winter. When this episode releases, it might be the dead of winter, though who knows? With
Adele has a
It
schedule.
should be the end of December, just before the New Year.
oh yeah, but will the weather be winter? That's the real
That's the
question.
Yeah, global warming is real.
Yeah. So when this episode airs, hope it'll probably be cold and snowy and dreary. So reach out to your friends and family and make sure that you stick together through this time of the year because, it sucks.
It does.
It is rough.
Yeah. My landlord's kids, I think, are finally off school, so everything's very loud.
Yeah. Or if not already, then they will be soon.
Yep. It's great. It's fun. It's fine. Okay.
We'll retaliate with the Yule party.
Exactly. It'll be fine. Anyway.
Thanks for sharing, Chris. It was good. It was a good story. It was a good time. Good,
no
good
problem.
message.
Good to have you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Now, hopefully you'll let me out of your basement?
No.
No, you have to stick around for another 2 weeks.
Please.
No.
Don't worry, we'll feed you.
I have fish to not feed because I don't own fish.
I don't have a fish. I have a moss ball. I have dumpling for you.
Ooh, dumpling.
Yes.
Fried dumpling?
Well, it's not fried. It's baked.
Chicken fried dumpling?
Chicken fried Christmas dumpling?
No.
Kentucky fried dumpling.
No.
This,
Stop.
Colonel Sanders, if you're listening, because I know you are.
No.
Sponsor us with Kentucky fried dumpling.
Kellogg's.
Kellogg?
I don't know.
Do you know the story of Kellogg?
Yeah.
I don't know.
He broke into Vault 111 and shot your significant other and stole your baby.
Not that Kellogg.
Oh.
Different Kellogg. Kellogg, he believed that masturbation was evil, and to stop people from masturbating, he was going to feed them the blandest cereal ever, and that's where he invented cornflakes.
And now we have Frosted Flakes that has made so many people into furries because of Tony the Tiger.
Yep, and he would also be rolling in his grave, so good. And he also used to have regular yogurt enemas because he thought they were healthy.
I feel like Tony the Tiger would appreciate that.
I hate that you said that out loud.
This is the cursed episode.
This is the extra cursed episode.
Hello,
Now that I'm not talking about my notes and like what I had like planned to talk about, I'm just gonna go hog wild.
That's all the time we have today.
30 to 40 feral hogs. Anyway.
Balls deep in 30 to 40 squealing hogs. I'm so sorry, but Cards Against Humanity, if you're listening, because I know you are, please make that a card.
You can make it a card yourself.
I know.
I have blank cards.
I know.
I'm not going to let you make that a card, but I have blank cards. Okay.
Okay. We're gonna leave now.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening, everybody. If you want to send us an email, tell us about your favorite liminal spaces, what Chris did wrong today.
How cursed Chris is.
How cursed Chris is. How my absence has affected you in this day because I left for half this episode to make dumpling.
It's okay.
You
made it in for a good chunk of it.
Exactly. So yeah, just shoot us an email at liminalspacespod@gmail.com. You can follow us at Twitter at liminalspacespod and Instagram, the cursed space, at liminalspacespod. We're on YouTube. We're on most streaming platforms, actually, I think, at this point.
Yeah, we should be.
Yeah. You can find my Twitter at Arsenic in New Lace, and you can find Chris's Twitter through my Twitter. He's one of my few friends on there.
I do not exist.
He does.
In a professional sense.
And
in a human sense?
In a human sense?
In a dimensional sense. I am not on this dimension, actually.
That's because we're on the 11th dimension.
That's true.
There are either 11 or 26 dimensions, and scientists can't decide which one, and that fucks me up so bad.
Listen.
You can find Adele in places.
Yeah, dimension speak is a whole other thing, because then there's the whole, like, dimensions as consciousness. Dimensions is a whole other topic we'll cover at some point, I'm sure.
We'll have to...
When we're all okay enough to deal with existential crises.
I know one person who's a mathematician who might be able to talk about that, but I don't know.
A mathematician?
Mathematician.
Mathematician.
She has a degree.
Makes numbers into magic.
She makes words.
She makes words. She makes words.
She makes numbers into magic.
That's just a plain magician.
You're not wrong.
I have social medias. Adele's Instagram. I'm just reading the doc. I'm sorry.
Adele, you can find
my
Adele on Instagram.
Is at Adele Bernadette, or my Twitter is at Adele_palm, like the palm tree.
PALM.
PALM. Plum.
Plum.
That's my favorite Fire Emblem character.
I hate that. That probably is a Fire Emblem character. I don't know enough about Fire Emblem to say it's not.
Yeah, me neither.
Our intro and outro music has been Into the Woods by Purple Planet Music.
Thank
you. Our
Our
guest has been Chris. You'll see him next week. Next 2 weeks.
When they finally let me out of the basement.
Coming out of my cage, and I've been feeling just fine. Gotta get down because I want it all. How much
don't want the killers to sue us.
They would never.
They would never.
I've given them too much of my time and money and love for them to sue us.
Oh.
Like my whole life.
Hard eyes, motherfucker.
We fucked up our outro last time.
That's Chris. He's thrown us off.
I'm just an agent of absolute chaos.
Yeah,
but not in the Joker way.
Agent of chaos.
I'm an agent of chaos.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah. So
this has been Adele.
I've been Adele.
No, you're supposed to.
I can't. I don't know how.
I don't exist. This is Chris, and we'll see you next time
in the
liminal
spaces. Wow.
That's close enough.
That's close enough.
It's good enough.
I feel like the fact that it was slightly off time just really makes it.
It really does. Sometimes you just need to be off time.
Yeah.
Too late. Oh, we're flying away.
It's too late. We're flying away.
The helium balloons. Oh, for fuck's sakes. I told you, the car can't handle the helium balloons. Oh, it's too late now. We're flying away.
Every time you get into a Prius.
Smart car. You can hang a smart car up in your closet. It's fine.
I don't think you should restrain smart cars to the closet. They are obviously very gay.
Yeah. It's an open closet. It's less of a closet and more of just a hanger in the middle of your hallway.
My closet.
What's the function of this?
Smart cars are hung.
Oh.